Adam, so glad to have you here, sir. Thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure to be here.
And then just jumping right into it here, Adam. When did you get started in music? When did your fascination with it begin?
Oh, I was pretty young. Um, my mother was always taking me to see concerts when I was real small, little baby. Like, I don't remember this stuff, but I saw James Brown, I saw Peaches and Herb, I saw um, just countless. I was born in Cleveland. There was this really cool theater there called the Front Row Theater, and it was kind of like this a theater in the round. So the stage was in the middle and it rotated. So it was 365 degrees. And I think that's really when my fascination started, because instead of a traditional concert setup, when you're just facing the front of the band, in that situation, the stage would rotate around. So I got to really see what the drummer was doing and really what the keyboard guys were doing, and the bass player and all that. It was just fascinating. So, and then I started playing music. I wanted to play piano. I started when I was about 5 years old with lessons.
And
And
that was yeah. Did you start with the piano or with the organ?
piano,
Piano
piano,
first.
years and years. I started playing organ. I was probably uh, 16, 17 is when I got my first Hammond B3, and I just absolutely fell in love with that.
And
It's a
you jumped in with a Hammond. You
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's great. That's a good in point right there.
Yeah.
You met Dr. Lonnie Smith, right? When you were young in this is in Ohio.
In Florida.
Oh, okay.
So he at that time, and yeah, that was right around when I was 15 or 16. And he was a giant influence for me to play organ. But he was playing at this nightclub. It was called O'Hara's. And he played, I don't remember, it was 5 or 6 nights a week. And my father was living in Florida then, and he lived about a mile away from the club. And even though I was underage, I think they served food so I could go. So when I would come to visit my father in Florida, I would almost every night go to see the doctor. And yeah, to just, he kind of took me in and would talk to me, and it was very influential. I mean, he really was a teacher to many of our generation of organ players. And then I would always take notes about what he was telling me about. And especially when I was 15 and 16, just getting into it, it was just fascinating. In fact, just I'm up in New York State doing some gigs this weekend. And, we moved the organ and I put the Leslie right behind me. And I was thinking about the doctor, because he would always tell me that. He'd just say that he loved the feeling of having the Leslie right behind his back. So, we rearranged the stage and I put the Leslie right behind my back, and I was saying, oh, this is how the doctor would want to do it. So just little things like that. He never taught me anything traditionally, like sitting at the organ, showing me things like that necessarily. It was more concept based, I'd say.
And those concepts you still put into practice today.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, were you going off of what you learned within the piano, moving it forward into the Hammond?
Well, I mean, sort of. I mean, it's all the same notes and that thing about it, but I felt two ways about it. And I mean, the first thing I felt was, as soon as I touched the organ, I remember it felt more like my personality somehow. I always love bass lines. My favorite thing about music is the interaction between the bass player and the drummer. And I kind of have a laser focus towards that. So with organ, I get to play the bass. So that's really the main difference. So I love playing the bass. I love playing the foot pedals, because it gives me both sides of uh, the
Coin.
music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, Now I've also read that you've been coined as a Hammond specialist.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, would not say anyone necessarily wants to hear me play piano, including myself. I never really had the sensitivity that I think it takes to be a great piano player, like the voicing sensitivity and all those little things that really make piano players great and unique. I was just much happier, playing the bass line, making sure that was together. So
Mhm. And what was your first introduction to the Hammond, especially? Was it that it was in the family or?
no, it was from music. So um, I got pretty serious about playing piano when I was 13 or 14. And I started playing all around in Youngstown, Ohio, because we had moved closer to there. And so I was doing little gigs around town with the musicians. And there was this drummer named Shedrick Hobbs. He's a great jazz drummer. Um, he has a real interesting history too. I mean, he actually played with Charlie Parker
Wow.
when they came through Youngstown once, and he played a lot with Jack McDuff when McDuff would come through town, and just a great guy. And he also took me under his wing. We used to do a bunch of shows together, and he would always say, "Well, Adam, I think you sound more like an organ player than a piano player. You should try it out." I was like, "Okay, well, I don't have an organ." So I went to see him once. There's this great organ player out of Pittsburgh named Gene Ludwig, and he was in town from Pittsburgh playing with Shedrick. And so I went to the gig, and I just went up and introduced myself to Gene and said, "Oh, I play with Shed and all that stuff." And so Gene said, "Hey, you want to sit in and play a song?" I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." I didn't really know what to do. So decided to play an F blues. And that was the first time I actually played one. And it was that's when I knew that I had to go in for the organ.
Sure, that's the right time to do it in front of a bunch of people at a gig.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And
Yeah, no,
luck,
yeah, let me sit down on an instrument that I never played before. Yeah, yeah, it'll be fine. Well, I'll feel it out. I'll find my way.
yeah. So and then yeah, I was just kind of lucky after that. I think I was talking to my mother and I said, "Hey, I want to start playing organ." So we looked in the classified ads, and there was someone selling their B3, like 5 miles down the road. And I mean, this was in the 90s or even the late 80s. So it was not expensive. It was just heavy. It's not like today where, you know, it, the pricing's on the internet. So got a great deal, got it to the house and started really getting into it.
If Gene hadn't exposed you to the Hammond, do you think that you would have naturally crossed paths with it eventually?
Probably in a different way, because I always did love the organ, but hearing it as a kid, mostly in, popular music, rock or soul music or something like that. But it wasn't until I really sat down and, from that, I started to listen to Jimmy Smith and Jack McDuff and, you know, all that. So I probably would have played it, but maybe in a different kind of setting.
Mhm. Did that really inform your relationship with it, being exposed to it at that age? You said 14 or 15-ish?
I think I was probably 16 now that I think
16?
about it, because I remember driving to the show. So I must have just got my driver's license.
A man about town.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, yeah, the organ is a special instrument, and I also remember the first record I really heard that was also very influential, which was Larry Young's record called Unity. And it's, say, maybe a more progressive type of organ playing or jazz playing than the Jimmy Smith records that I had, and I liked them. But after I heard Larry Young, I thought, wow, there's a lot more possibilities here than and to my ears at that age, I was more interested in that. But then from that, I kind of went back and got into Jimmy Smith and realized how he is, the most phenomenal organ player of all times.
Right. And was there, I mean, there was a scene of some sort in Ohio when you were getting into music yourself.
Yeah, I played a lot of local gigs. There were great musicians there, but really, I got out of there as soon as I could. I couldn't wait to leave. And I went to college when I was 17 and then pretty much never went back. So at 17, I'd moved to Boston. I went to Berkeley for a year, and then I switched to a school called William Patterson in New Jersey the second year, and because I wanted to be closer to New York City.
Mhm.
Um, it was about 10 miles away or 15 or something. And then
Right
from
there.
there,
Right, neighbors.
neighbors. So I
Yeah.
would go into the city almost every night um, to go hear music. Also at that time, it was great because all the organ players were a bit younger of a generation. Um, so I got to see all of the great organ players. Got to see them live. I got to know a lot of them. I got to, see them multiple times a year. I would just go to every time they would play, I would go to all the shows.
And how did you start immersing yourself in it? You just started showing up like, okay, I hear that there's stuff going on over here, and you just kind of figured it out that
Well,
way.
yeah, back then there was the Village Voice, and just in the back there was one specific page that had all the listings. So,
Mhm.
if I saw Charles Erlin's name, I was there. Or if I saw Big John Patton's name, I was there. Or McDuff, or and plus all the local guys that were so great. Reuben Wilson was playing every Thursday up at Showman's. A great organ player, Bobby Forrester, I think was playing every Friday or every Wednesday. Um, yeah, so I was just out seeing organ music.
Was that super influential for you at that point? Like, okay, something's happening every night in
Oh
this
yeah.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, and then my second year, I thought, well, it's kind of counterproductive to live in New Jersey and then have to drive to the city every day and then come back. So then I did the switch, and I was living in New York City and would commute out to New Jersey to school. So then I could have like a reverse rush hour situation. Much
Was it?
better.
Yeah, ended up being easier driving wise.
Oh yeah, way easier.
Mm.
Because I would be in the city every day anyways, if it was the weekend or if at night, or almost every day. So then I was in the city, and so, all I'd have to do is drive out to school and come back.
And you're driving. You're not taking the transportation.
Yeah, out
You're out there
there,
finding parking spots. That's tough.
right. Alternate side parking. I became a master. I think I only got towed once.
Out of the was a span of time
For getting towed.
for that time of just learning how to park and parking your vehicle. There was a
Well,
span.
you just got to read the signs. Basically, I think when I got towed, someone had stolen the bus station sign or the bus stop sign, and there was a bunch of cars parked there. And then I came back the next day, and all the cars were gone, and it was a bus stop. So I said, oh, you know,
Still, numbers wise, that's pretty good.
yeah, pretty good.
Was the first kind of band that you became a part of there in New York was the Sugarman 3?
Maybe so, as far as a band situation. I mean, I was playing gigs almost every night as a freelance sideman, from the time I was about 19, all over the city. But it wasn't really a formal unit. It would be, you're playing with this guy or this guy or this guy's great, and you're around town. But yeah, Sugarman 3 was probably what I would call as the first actual band, where it was, you know, Rudy on drums and Neil and Coleman, and then yeah, and probably the first recordings I was on that the people started to notice was that band.
And were you lugging around a Hammond 3 at this
Uh,
point?
Sometimes I did have a B3 in my apartment, and I did have a van. So on special occasions, we would get it in the thing and take it to a gig. But usually around town, it's just something I could put in a taxi, because I mean it's a major ordeal to move one of those things. And
Sure. Yeah, it's heavy and yeah.
yeah, and a lot of those gigs I was doing were just like the venues were so small in New York. It wasn't even a venue. Like we'd be playing at a restaurant, background music or something like that. So they don't necessarily want you to come in with a Hammond B3 and a Leslie if they're trying to, serve appetizers or something. But
Yeah, but it's good. It's good ambiance music.
yeah.
Yeah. Is it specifically a B3? Is that your go-to?
Well, there's a few Hammonds that have all the same internal parts: the Hammond B3, the Hammond C3, and the Hammond A100. So they sound exactly the same. It's just that they have a different physical look to them. And the most desired one is the Hammond B3 because of it has like molded legs and things like that. That's what you'll see mostly if you're watching some concert on television. It's the most sought after physically, I guess.
Mhm. Is that the one that appeals to you the most visually?
That doesn't really matter. It's just really the sound of the organ. But yeah, there is something about it. If the B3 has a very specific look, so I'm always happy to to see one of those. I was just in Japan for a few weeks and did some shows, and there's a lot of Hammond B3s over there. It was a nice surprise. Where here you might get a club might have an A100 or it might have a C3, which is great, but then once you get the C3, it's a little different. Also, now that I think about it, with the B3, the feet are exposed for the audience. So if you're playing foot pedals, then the audience can tell that you're playing foot pedals, and I think it adds a little more of the mystery to the instrument.
Mhm.
The C3 and A100, they have a covered back, so you can't see that.
You can't see the magic behind the curtain.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. Now, getting back to the Sugarman 3. So that, I mean, that was really like the first actual band that you were playing consistently with the same dudes
Mhm.
relatively regularly.
Yeah, and that was the first band that I was in that we really started touring, you know. I remember our first gig was in Italy. We flew over there and we couldn't believe that, like, the way that they released that record was really great. And we started to get all this interest from Europe. So we started with that one little like one off in Italy, and then I think we went back and we maybe played Switzerland and London and maybe one other little town. And then we just started going to Europe, and there was a big audience for that music at that time. So we would probably go to Europe 3 or 4 times a year for, up to 2 months at a time,
Wow.
and got to really travel and see all that, uh, those amazing cities. And so that was a really great experience. And we did that for years and years.
How soon after the formation of the band did you guys start doing that?
Let me think about it. Our first record was called Sugar's Boogaloo, and I think we recorded that in 1996, maybe 97. I was 21 years old, and you know, probably 6 months after that, once people heard the record, we started to get um, calls. I think they had put a little phone number on the back of the album that said, "For booking info, call this phone number." But they released the album in a way that you couldn't tell that if it was an old record or a new record. Um, and so I think they just started getting phone calls on this voicemail they had set up, you know.
Good deal. I mean, luckily it wasn't your phone though, so that's
Yeah, I think it just
plus.
went to a voicemail.
And that band started in 92 or 93?
Probably, probably more around 96, 96.
96. Oh, 96. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
so relatively soon after making the creation of the band, did you guys it really started moving?
Yeah, I mean, Neil Sugarman, he had a really like laser focus on what he wanted the band to sound like, and a specific style. And I think that really helped because it differentiated us from other similar bands. So people knew if it was Sugarman 3, it was going to be this funky, soulful boogaloo type mix of music. And we were playing parties all over the New York City, doing a lot of gigs along with DJs that were playing similar music. There's a real scene for it back then. I mean, we were busy. When we were in New York City, we were probably doing 2 to 3 gigs a week easy with that band, and then on the road for all those years too. So
Wow.
it was a really cool scene.
Did you pick up instantly what the band needed to sound like?
No, I had a lot to learn, because I was 21. I was still like developing my style, had a lot of interests. I was also playing a lot of jazz at that time, and blues stuff, and just whoever would ask me to do the gigs. So I understood the direction, because a lot of the Jack McDuff records, we were doing a lot of the kind of funky boogaloo organ stuff that Jack McDuff had made, and Lou Donaldson. So I knew that, but still, like, I really learned how to play that style, because if you play outside of the genre that it's supposed to be, it doesn't sound right. So, and as a young man, I probably was tempted to play all this like complicated stuff that I had been practicing that doesn't necessarily fit into the genre of music. So, yeah, I understood what it was, but yeah, I tweaked it out, and I know what to do now.
Took a little bit, but
Yeah,
trained it
like
out.
why,
Yeah.
like just because I'm at home practicing some like complicated thing and I want to try it, doesn't mean that it's going to sound right if I put it into a song that it's not supposed to be in.
Right. Right.
So it's just like coming to terms with that.
Now, what was the comparison between like what the reaction was in the States, especially like New York, for example, and like who you were playing to in Switzerland? Was there like a major difference of like the reaction of the audience, or was it pretty
Yeah,
same?
I mean, it was definitely on a different scale. I mean, we were playing really cool parties over the city, but usually small clubs here and there. But we went to Europe and we were playing big festivals or bigger rooms. Um, I remember, I didn't even know what it was. I remember in 2000 we played Glastonbury Festival, and I had not heard of that festival. And we showed up, and it's like, oh man, there's like 100,000 people here. What's happening? So we were getting really excellent bookings, and playing North Sea Jazz Fest and Montreux Jazz Fest, and in New York, we were playing some kind of cool underground parties, but it wasn't on the same level. I've been super lucky in my career, because my main goals were to play music and travel and get to see the world. And, I got to certainly see more of the world than I ever thought I would be able to. And it's all thanks to playing organ. So,
Awesome.
and that way I was ready. I didn't care where I was going or what I was doing, as long as I was on that path.
You're ready for it,
Yeah.
whatever came.
Mhm.
Um, have you since taken what you've experienced and learned from that time of being in that band, from was it 96 to still presently? It's not done
Yeah, I
done.
mean, we're still technically a band. It's just we haven't played in a few years. So hopefully, I think the last time we did shows, we did a little tour of the UK in maybe 2017.
Okay,
Super fun. And I think we did a weekend in San Francisco shortly after that. But
good deal.
yeah, I mean, we're still going. It's just everyone's kind of in different places. I'm living in Florida. Uh, Rudy's in New York, Neil's in Switzerland, we're all kind of everywhere. So it's not like it used to be when we all lived within, 20 blocks of each other.
That makes it a bit easier, I've
Yeah.
heard. Yeah. It being on a hiatus now, but I mean, still going up until, I mean, recent years here, has that the time in that band gone on to inspire and just help what you have done since then with like, Scone Cash Players and your solo stuff? Has that
Yeah,
informed what you were doing? Okay.
yeah, certainly, especially Scone Cash Players. I mean, it's kind of like an extension of all that sort of thing, because I want Scone Cash Players to be, in that same soul, funky organ players, the lead singer kind of world. And it was so great that Neil Sugarman was able to play on my latest release on Daptone. So when we recorded that, that record's Brooklyn to Brooklyn. He came out and we spent the week together making the record. So that was a very nice reunion.
That's great. When did you decide it was time to start Scone Cash Players?
Let's think. I probably did our first recordings with that around 2007 or 8, and it just started being like, oh, I think, well, Sugarman 3, we all got very busy because Neil was also, um, as a co-founder of Daptone Records, and with Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, they really took off. They were so busy with Sharon Jones, and they were, doing all these amazing gigs. And well, then there was the Amy Winehouse years too. So it left a little more time, and I was busy with another band touring. So I was like, oh, I want to keep doing this stuff. So I started Scone Cash Players, just sort of as a side project in maybe 2007 or 8 or something. And then it just kind of grew from there. And it wasn't until I moved to Florida in about 2000, I guess 15 now, that I really started focusing that on that band. New York City, I was always so busy as a sideman, playing gigs all over town or doing different things. It was hard to focus on my own project, but Miami gave me the ability to just do that, focus on that for a change.
Mhm. And where did you come up with the idea to name it Scone Cash Players? It was a little bit of a paying homage to the Ohio players, right?
Right, because my Ohio origins, I always
Right.
like that in the name. And Scone, of course, and Cash is my middle name. So
Oh, okay. Good
yeah,
deal.
it's on my passport, it's on my driver's license. So I
It's all
was like,
it's
"Let's
all
put it
legit.
on there." Yeah.
Very nice. Uh Now did you kind of know what you wanted to do with in terms of sound and how you wanted it to feel before kind of getting it going?
Yeah, and I mean, I try to make each record a little differently. The first recording we did is actually the Mind Blower, and that was more of a probably like a funky organ party kind of thing. And then Blast Furnace, more of a orchestral kind of journey.
Mhm.
And then As the Screw Turns, so probably more back to the party. There's some ballads, but it's mostly up tempo party type music. And then Brooklyn to Brooklyn was able to fulfill a dream. I always wanted to have a choir along with the organ. And so the organ is taking the part of the lead singer, and then you have the choir and all the instrumentation and some strings and things like that. But still funky
Able
at the
to.
same time.
Right, right. It's still keeping that the template of having it funky.
Yeah.
Does the band write with you? Is it like an all encompassing thing, or are you bringing ideas in for them? Because there's three of you mainly all together, right?
The lineup changes depending on who's available. But mostly, yeah, I write all the songs mostly. We have some collaborations sometimes, like maybe somebody will, well, like Ian Hendrickson Smith on Blast Furnace. He wrote all of the horn arrangements, um, but I wrote all of the other music, and he put all that together. So, but for the most part, it's all I'm writing the songs by myself and bringing them in.
Is it difficult to translate your ideas for other instruments for the people who are playing with you at that time?
Not really. I mean, most of the people in the bands that I play with, we've been working together for years and years, so it's a pretty instantaneous um, connection. Also, playing the organ, I control so much, so I'm controlling the bass and the harmonies and the melody. So um, I think it's probably easier to move along quickly since I'm holding down those three aspects. And then, you're dealing after that, you're dealing with beat or I know just, can give them a quick chord chart or something. And it's usually pretty fast.
Right. When you go into to write, are you starting at the organ and building out from there?
It changes a lot of times. I'm the kind of person that if I have a project that I want to do, then I'll start writing. So I kind of do it in streaks. So like, okay, I have this recording session, who knows, in 2 weeks. So I got to write some songs. So I'll really focus on that. Sometimes I'll sit at the piano and start that way. Sometimes I'll start with the organ. A lot of times, I'll wake up in the morning and have something in my head, and then I'll rush to like some instrument, whichever one is closest, and try to get it down before I forget it, at least record it. So a lot of the process is like that.
Yeah. How many times have you had an idea like that and it's slipped away and you weren't able to hash it out before it
That's
left?
a good question. I don't know.
Maybe they came back and
Yeah, maybe
then
they
yeah,
came back. Who
or maybe they
knows?
will come back. Let's just
I
say
mean,
that. Let's
now
let's keep the spirits high on that.
yeah.
That would
Now
suck.
yeah, it's way easier now than it used to be because everyone has a some kind of recorder in their phone basically. So even if it's in the middle of the night or if I'm traveling and I'm not in the uh, near an instrument, I can just grab the phone, sing into it, and do little verbal notes of what it should be, and then
Mhm.
I'll go back later and listen to it, and then really figure it out once I can get to an instrument.
Gotcha.
Yeah, years ago it was harder though, before there was recorders everywhere and all that sort of stuff.
You had to remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Paul McCartney or John Lennon spoke about that like briefly. That I'm paraphrasing this, but they're like, if we didn't remember it, it wasn't good enough to be jotted down or something along those lines. I could be way wrong about that,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's
I've
kind
heard
of
that. I've heard that
yeah.
quote. I'm
Okay.
not sure who it's from, but yeah, I've heard that before.
All right. I appreciate you backing me on that, Adam, because I was a little bit timid to say it, but yeah, that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. Maybe that is the correct way to look at it, or maybe there's the correct way for them because there's a right or wrong answer, but it is the fucking Beatles saying that, so
Yeah.
they might have a point.
Right. I mean, they probably had really great memories too for
Yeah.
that.
Now, what were we just talking about? The Cash Players started in New York,
Yeah.
and then you moved down to Miami.
I did. I moved there and continued the band from there.
Did you bring any of the people that you're working with in New York down to Miami?
No, but I mean, I met great musicians in Miami. So if I'm doing a gig there, I'll usually play with those guys. Sometimes, if someone's around from New York, or I have a few different variations of the band.
Hmm.
So it's really depending on who's available at the particular time.
Everybody is of the same mindset. They understand what's going on. It's not like or is it different at all when you're playing with people who are in New York and people who are in Miami and all these other places? Will it sound differently, or are people approaching the songs differently?
No, I think the approach is pretty much the same. And I wanted to keep the band that way. I wanted to make it so it was flexible and there wasn't any permanent members. Um, so it can be ever changing and always inspiring. And you know, also it's a lot easier to do it that way because if you have a set band with certain players and the one person is say on the road on another tour for 3 months, it kind of takes you out of any opportunities that might come around.
Yeah, that might hinder it a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you find it difficult to find members in Florida, or was it that just came really easily, like you just kind of got immersed?
I mean, when I first moved there, I just was out on the scene, like meeting everybody and going to see shows all the time, and it's pretty quickly. I found everyone there to be super welcoming,
Mhm.
and now um, the two guys I play with the most now in Florida actually moved from Los Angeles, and I'd known one of the guys from there. Um, so yeah, it's always different.
Mhm. Now, when you were going there as a kid, visiting your father when he was living down there, is it like the same kind of stuff that's going on? It's the same kind of scene, or has it changed at all
Yeah,
since?
I would say it's totally different. I mean, the place Dr. Smith was playing at was probably more of a traditional type jazz club, where with Scone Cash Players, we're playing in more, I don't know if you would call it a rock venue, but it's more of a like stand up and dance kind of thing than a sit down and listen kind of thing.
Mhm. And what made you want to make the move?
Just family stuff mostly, be closer to family. And what else? Yeah, I mean, my son's 10, so we have a lot more room for him than living in a New York City apartment.
I could see your point there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does location affect the music that you're making?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it only affects maybe the lineup of the musicians. So if I'm in New York, I've got a bunch of guys I might call for the gig up here. If I'm in Miami, it's different. If I'm in Brazil, it's a different group of guys and girls. Or Los Angeles, it's probably a different lineup. But the songs are going to be the same. It's just different musicians. And I'm lucky enough to have a lot of friends in the business that are just top notch. So it's always sounding great.
Right. Do they put their does everybody put their own spin on how they're playing these songs?
Yeah, probably. It's probably a little different. And I might tailor the set a little bit differently to
Mhm.
um, who it is. Like for example, this weekend, um, playing with Ian Hendrickson Smith up here in Brewster, and he played on As the Screw Turns and on Blast Furnace. So we're doing more songs from those two records because he's here and played on those records and did all that sort of thing. Where maybe in Miami I might choose different songs because it's a different lineup of people that played on the record.
Right. Now, this weekend, these shows you're gonna play, are you playing it on a Hammond or
Yep, I've got the Hammond B3 and the Leslie speaker, so it's doing a full speed up here.
full effect? No, I mean, obviously there's been times that you couldn't play the B3, right? I mean, in your in your span or over the course of your music career, does playing another organ type of organ or even keyboard or whatever the secondary option would be, does that affect the way that you play songs?
It may. I mean, I call them forgans for fake organ. But I like playing them too. There's different qualities and I did that for years. I would even do that on the Europe tours because with a Hammond organ, they stopped making those models in about 1972, maybe 73. And even if the club or the venue or the festival may have an organ, um, or they're renting one or doing something, you never quite know the condition of it or what it's going to sound like
Yeah.
because it's all mechanical moving parts inside. It's not a kind of technology that people really deal with anymore. So even in those cases, if the organ was broken or something like that, it's good to have a fallback so you can at least get through the show. So most of those tours, I would just bring the organ, and if there was a real B3 and it sounded great, I 100% use that. But if there was no organ or if there was some issue, then go with the forgan.
Tried and true
Yeah.
organ.
Mhm.
Now on top of the Scone Cash Players, you also make your own music under your own name.
Yeah. So Adam Scone is what I use for, I guess, more of the jazz stuff that I play and the jazz projects.
Mhm.
So I've made I don't know now 3 or 4 records under that. I have a new one in the works that's really super interesting. And I've in the last few records I've enjoyed putting in a different musical combinations, like Low and Slow has Ian Hendrickson Smith again on that, and he's playing only baritone saxophone, which is the low part, and most of the songs are slow or ballads. And then also a vibraphone player named Tom Beckham. I always loved the sound of organ and vibraphone, but I never got to do it. So we did it for that record.
Yeah, it definitely has a jazz feel to it.
Yeah, the new one is organ with pedal steel, which really turned out beautiful. I can't wait till that one comes out.
That's an interesting combo right
Yeah,
there.
it worked perfectly.
Wow. Okay.
Happy with that one.
Now, was the first solo release of Adam Scone the wild new electric organ sounds of Adam Scone back in 2002? Was that the first
Yeah,
release?
that was the first release of my record. That was actually probably recorded in about 96 or 97, but
Okay.
I put it out for a few years. And that features the great Ben Dixon on drums, who I was lucky enough to know and work with him. He a drummer on so many of my favorite old Blue Note records from the 60s with Jack McDuff and with Big John Patton and with Grant Green. And I found him, in the city, and we started working together a lot. And just to hear those same beats on, like, playing with me from the albums that I grew up loving was an amazing experience.
It must have been a trip.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was.
And it was the next release Ice Cream Scone in 2015? Was it the next
I think so. I think that's how it worked. Yeah. I think Ice Cream Scone was next, and then Low and Slow. I did a collaborative record with Rudy Petschower, who's the drummer with Sugarman 3, and John Hart. It's like, I think it's called Hart Albert and Scone, something like that. But that was more of a jazz project too.
Mm-hmm. What was the reasoning for kind of taking that hiatus from 2002 to 2015?
Yeah, those years I was just really focused on being a sideman. I didn't really have a motivation to lead my own project.
Mm-hmm.
So I was busy. I was on the road. I was making a bunch of other records, but just not taking the time or even wanting to make my own records. So hopefully between that one record and 15 years later or something, there's a change for the better. Who knows?
Now the most recent release that we just mentioned a little bit ago, Low and Slow, that was from 2021, right?
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna go with it.
Mhm.
And obviously that had more of a jazz feeling to it. But do you think that could have been a Scone Cash Players album?
Oh, no, not at all.
No.
It's not even intended to be in the same genre. I mean, I always think of it, Adam Scone, essentially the jazz stuff. Scone Cash Players is the funky soul organ stuff. So
Gotcha.
in my mind, it's completely separated.
Would have been totally different,
Yeah,
unrecognizable from what it was.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't do a Scone Cash Players record and have all ballads on it. I don't think that it's really would work the same way.
But we're gonna find out because that's the next album, right? That's what you're gonna work on.
I don't know what I'm going to do next with them. I mean, it still feels pretty fresh. Brooklyn to Brooklyn came out in September of last year, and now I'm just focused on trying to get the band some gigs and get out there on the road and see what happens.
How soon before making a record do you know what you want to do with an album, whether it be under your own name or Scone Cash Players?
Well, I mean, for songwriting, things like that, I'm a procrastinator. So, and I have to have a reason to write. I've found over the years. So it's pretty short. Like I'll just start. I'll just, if I know I have to do it, I'll get inspired, and it all comes together that way.
What tends to inspire you to finally like, all right, it's time to write?
Well, the new one, the Brooklyn to Brooklyn, I've been spending a lot of time in Brazil in the last few years, and really finding new music there I wasn't aware of, and falling in love with it. So I use that as a big inspiration. So I'd say it's a lot of the things that I'm listening to at the time can inspire me, different influences, different rhythms, things like that.
Mhm. What led you to Brazil?
Oh, my wife Georgia's from Brazil.
Oh,
So
okay.
um, so when I met her, I started going a lot with her and visiting, and it really opened up me to a whole different kind of Brazilian music, because I had known the stuff that is very popular sort of in the jazz world, Joe Beam and, all these great players like that. So I knew that music, but I didn't know this whole other world of things that are probably less popular here than that. And it really opened my ears up and mind up.
The Scone Cash Players did an episode of the Florida Room, and I was watching that before we did this interview.
Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah, and that was at a place called Max Club Deuce, and that was in Miami, right?
It's in Miami, yeah. So it's an interesting story how that whole thing came together. Um, so, well, Max Club Deuce is the oldest bar in Miami,
Oh wow.
one of the diviest bars in Miami for sure.
Yeah, I got that feeling from the from the video.
It's it's been in a lot of like sort of famous thing. Anthony Bourdain there would shoot a clip about that place every time he was in Miami. Just everyone knows it. The decorations, inside all come back. It used to be I guess the after shoot hangout for when they were making Miami Vice in the 80s. So it still has that sort of 80s look. I guess they had renovated it. The crew of Miami Vice had renovated it. They gave them a bunch of cool neon lights to put in there. So it's not a music venue at all. I don't know if they've ever really had music in there. And we just had this crazy idea, like, what if we got to play at the Deuce? And what if, we just showed up at 8 a.m, moved the organ in, and just played a quick set of music and made a little video about it. So it's a giant surprise that they actually let us do it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they're never going to let us do it. But my friend Danny and Mikey sort of made the connection with them and knew them. They said, oh, yeah, sure, let's do it. So, yeah, one morning we put the organ in the van and went down there and wheeled it in at 8 a.m. and played a set to whoever was in there, and that was it. And then took it out and left, and end of story. It's a once in a lifetime experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, was it a weekday if you could recall?
Yeah, I think it was on a Wednesday or something, like Wednesday at 8 a.m.
That's an odd blending of worlds.
Yeah.
Uh Now, like what was the people's reaction when you finally wrapped up the set? Because the video kind of cuts out, you don't really hear, but did people start paying more attention each song that you guys played?
I don't think so. No, I think they were probably pretty indifferent, and I think they were probably happy that we stopped because it was ruining their early morning drinking.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to a bar to 8 a.m., I would imagine you're expecting some solitude, some quiet, and you probably don't want to hear a band.
But you were there liven it up, just kind of just changing the format a little bit.
Yeah, just yeah. I mean, I was trying to like, think what that would be like. Why is a band playing at 8 a.m. in at a dive bar in Miami?
Did anyone ask at all?
No, no one asked.
And no one told you to cut it. People are just letting you do it, letting you hang
Some
out.
people, it was videoed, So I think some people did not want to be in the video. I remember that, which I can't, honestly, I can't blame them.
Right.
So there were some people that would like sit on the other side of the video, or they would come in and then they just leave because they don't want to deal with this, the cameras and the band and all that. But pretty crazy experience that I never thought would happen.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Was that one of the oddest places that you've performed a set?
Yeah, I mean, I played in a lot of bars like that, but usually it's at 11 p.m. or midnight or something.
Not 11 a.m.
Yeah, not 8 a.m. I mean, we
8
showed. Yeah, we showed up. They said, "Oh yeah, you can get here when when we're starting to open up." So I think we got there at 6 a.m.
It was still in the beginning of the video, and this will be linked below. Please
Yeah.
go watch it. It's a good video. It was dark outside when you guys were driving there.
Yep.
Kind of loading in at the crack of dawn.
Yep, that's it.
That's such a great idea and a great video. And again, that'll be linked below. Whatever.
Yeah, please check it out. I mean,
To this
I don't know how many people have really seen that thing, but it's a one of a kind. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully some more people go and check that thing out because it is worth a watch.
Yeah, the Florida Room. They have some other great episodes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam, absolute pleasure chatting with you, sir.
Yeah,
But
thank you so much.
before I let you go, we got a lot of promo stuff to do because you got a lot of things going on, and we got to let the people know about it.
Okay, let's do it.
So, again, that video, start there. It'll be below whatever you're listening to this on. I highly recommend going and checking that out. And Scone Cash Players music is streaming everywhere, wherever you get your music. That's where you could find it. You could find the newest album, Brooklyn to Brooklyn, at daptonerecords.com, and you could find the other releases at the Bandcamp, which is sconecashplayers.bandcamp.com. Is that the best place that people can go support as well?
Blast Furnace is currently reissued on Coal Mine Records. So you can go right to the Coal Mine Records website to find it there.
Yeah.
Also. And
so go visit Coal Mine as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And there, I feel so honored and privileged to work with both Daptone and Coal Mine. They're my two favorite record labels. And they like to work together as well. It's just, and they've really helped me get my music to a bigger audience.
Amazing stuff coming out of both those record labels constantly. Great stuff. And you can find shows and news by going to the website at sconecashplayers.com or by following them on Instagram at sconecashplayers, all one word, no underscores.
This is true.
That is true. All right. Good deal. One checked off. Now, Adam's solo music is also streaming everywhere. Wherever you get your music, that's where you could find these releases that we've been talking about. And the most recent album, Low and Slow, you can find that through the Bandcamp, your Bandcamp, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is it the best place to go find it?
Yeah, you can also, that was put out through, distributed through Cellar Live out of Vancouver.
Okay.
So you can find it on their record label as well.
Good deal. And Adam's Bandcamp is adamscone.bandcamp.com, and you can stay up to date with shows, news, and all that good stuff by following his website, which is adamscone.com, or by following him on Instagram at adamscone, all one word.
That's it.
Then finally, third one, Sugarman 3's music is streaming everywhere as well, correct?
That is true.
Yeah, so go check that out, and you can find their music at their Bandcamp at thesugarman3.bandcamp.com.
Yeah. Also, those records are all on Daptone, and the old ones are re-released, all beautifully made vinyl. Good pressings, tip-on jackets, everything you want when it comes to the good stuff.
Everything on the up and up around there.
Yeah.
Good deal. And is there anything else we got to promote, Adam?
Let's see. No, not really. I think we hit it all together.
We got a pretty good spread here.
Yeah, we got a lot happening. So Jacob, it's been a real pleasure, and thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine, sir. And thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording this. I'll talk to you in a minute. All right.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.